All right, we are officially beginning the May 25th, 2024 SCAN Sarasota Citizens Action Network meeting, and our first speaker is David Ionati. So David, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to make sure you can hear me. I'm unmuted, right?
Yep.
All right. So I guess I'm like the opening act here. I don't have any bad jokes. I kind of felt like I should have a bad joke or two, but I kind of failed. I tried to find a developer joke that would be funny, but none of them were very funny. So um, we have a big meeting coming up in the city of North Port on Tuesday, the 28th at 6 p.m. I've lived in the city 20 years now. I've seen a tremendous lot of changes in the time I've been here. The changes that I'm seeing in this comp plan future land use map really are so incredibly drastic. I kind of find it hard to believe. I'm hoping I'm really reading it the wrong way. If you look at this map here, this is the city of North Port, of course. I'm not sure if you can actually see my mouse, but if you look at the collector roads that run primarily north-south through the city, such as Salford and Cranberry and Chamberlain, these roads are now have a shading of medium density corridor, which is a new zoning term that I hadn't heard previously. I believe these were listed as mixed use 1 and 2 before. And if you look at Price Boulevard, the majority of that is now high density corridor. This is something that radically changes what the city looks like. In the past, we talked about activity centers, and they were supposed to be kind of focal points for commercial development. And I think there was a lot of logic and reason behind having activity centers. You knew where they were. You knew when you were living in a neighborhood that you weren't going to have light industrial, for example, next to your house. What these new density corridor, I guess these are proposed at this point, zoning would really do is really affect all the entire residential areas of the city. So when you look at, for example, Salford here, and you look at these medium density corridor plots or lots that are designated there in that light tan color, the way this zoning reads is that property that actually is up to a half a mile away from it can actually apply for medium density corridor or MDC zoning as well. And when you look at the high density corridor areas, which is entirely Price, which runs east-west through North Port, 75's to the north of North Port, essentially. The zoning there can actually extend 1.5 miles from Price in any direction. Property within 1.5 miles could also apply for high density corridor zoning. That is my understanding. That is how it reads. I am hoping to get clarification at Tuesday's meeting. What it does is really drastically change what the city looks like. So I can't really see my screen tabs very well with the Zoom thing up top. Let me just click OK on that. So this is kind of a quick and dirty example of what I'm talking about. If you can't see the screen, please let me know. But if you look at the orange line that runs between Sumter and Salford, it's pretty much the center of the screen. That's a half mile. So parcels all along Salford that would be medium density corridor could actually be extended out a half a mile. Well, that essentially goes through all of this single family residential housing. And it's pretty much true of the entire city. So everywhere you look in the city where there are families living, where homes were purchased as residential single family, where any reasonable person would believe that they would be in a residential area, are potentially now going to have either medium density corridor, which actually includes light commercial, or high density, which includes buildings that can be up to 100 feet tall And I believe the medium density definition had 50-foot height. So that's pretty drastic. That's the entire residential area of Northport with very few exceptions. If you look at the lines running north and south off of West Price, which runs through the center of the city there, center of this map, those longer lines are 1.5 miles. So all of West Price through the center part of the city would be high density corridor with this new proposed zoning or future land use map change. And as such, as it's defined, 1.5 miles from that zoning, you could apply to combine lots and actually have anywhere within that 1.5 miles the same zoning. So that to me is about as extreme a proposition as you could possibly come up with. It's essentially saying that all of the neighborhoods of Northport can be commercially developed. I never saw a meeting that the commission held where they directed staff to come back with anything like this. I don't know how this passes any kind of reasonable test. The city does have, areas down East Price where there's less single family housing. There's a planned highway exit, and that area, no one wants to be affected by development they don't want to see, but far less people would be affected in that area. And I'm not sure why we wouldn't be prioritizing areas like that are much less densely settled, and areas that are already defined as activity centers. So again, I'm just the opener here. I don't have all the detail. I think we were actually going to be relying on others for some of the detail. I know that Pam is going to go a lot into zoning and definitions. So I don't want to take up too much time going over this, but this is just an example of what it looks like. And this is through the whole city. So over here, Ponce de Leon, that would be medium. There's medium density corridor zoning on that. 1/2 mile from it in either direction. So again, right into the hearts of these neighborhoods. These are all houses, right? So 1/2 mile in from any of these what we're calling medium density corridor in this proposal, you could have like right here we have 3 lots. Let's say this could be light industrial. This could be commercial. This could be a 50-foot tall building directly in the middle of neighborhoods. In my opinion, this is destroying the quality of life for the citizens. And I don't mean that as hyperbole. I mean that as who would want that? It goes out over and over again that our tax burden's too high. I don't believe it is compared to a lot of cities. I don't see the math behind that statement ever. It seems to be politically expedient to say that as if people are just going to fall in line. I don't know anyone also that would give up a several $100 tax increase for having commercial development in their yard or in the house next door to them. So this also goes down all the way down here in East Price off of East Price. This would be 1.5 miles from East Price. So all the way into this area over here, Albatross Lane, Vaughan, Jason Street, anywhere in here, the way this reads, could be considered high density corridor. This is San Mateo, which is a collector road, as they would call it, and it would have the medium density corridor designation. So this is a 1/2 mile in each direction. So again, just showing you, there's not a single neighborhood almost in the entire city, except maybe Welland Park, I guess, or perhaps some of the gated communities. Obviously, they're not gonna have any development in there that's gonna be commercial because they have their own rules and so forth. But yeah, I mean, this is basically the city, and these lines represent either 1.5 miles in for what's going to be proposed to be high density corridor, or a 1/2 mile off of roads that are going to be considered medium density. So this is Cranberry, So that's a half a mile into Cranberry. You're almost already at Salford. If you went a half mile the other way from Salford, essentially everything between Cranberry and Salford. Yeah, I mean, there's just nothing that really escapes the reach of what's being proposed there. Um, so and here are the definitions. Medium density corridor. These lands generally located along arterial and collector roads and may include parcels within a half mile of a right-of-way designated as an arterial or collector and are designated to provide for medium density residential uses in various neighborhoods serving retail or light industrial, environmental conservation, which we have really almost none of it in the Greenway. We like to include things like Maca State Forest. Government uses, including public schools. High density corridor, pretty much the same, only it's high intensity and up to 1.5 miles from a right-of-way designated as an arterial. And if you go into the actual definitions, which I'm sure Pam will, medium density corridor and high density corridor, actually, when I looked at it, have no minimum lot size. So minimum lot size is 0. And medium density had a height of up to 50 feet and high density had up to 100 feet. And again, here in the middle, going down price, the darker brown color, all down price, you could see that would be reclassified as high density. Also down here by, I believe this would be South Biscayne. And then all of the tan going up South Biscayne towards North Biscayne. That would be medium density corridor going towards Ponce de Leon over here. This would be medium density. Salford, medium density, South Salford, North and South Cranberry. And again, you have to take into account that these shaded areas, what's being shown here to me is incredibly misleading because it does not show that this designation affects a half a mile in each direction from the right of way in these areas, or a mile and a half in the case of high density. So it's either by design that it's misleading, I'm misunderstanding it completely, which I would hope that would be the case, or it's gross negligence that it's being presented this way. I guess we'll find out on that. So we'll move on from that. I know Pam is going to speak a lot about zoning in North Port. Well, actually, one other thing I would like to point out. If you see Warm Mineral Springs over here, we now, Warm Mineral Springs is always designated as Activity Center 7. The city has been adamant about drawing an imaginary line between the springs and the rest of that property, even though it is a single parcel and it was purchased as a single parcel. They've now created 7B Activity Center so they can define commercial use on the 60 acres. That's part of the 80 acres that makes up that single parcel. So again, just another attempt to pretend it's not a park, to pretend that it's separate from the springs and that it could be developed as they wish. I really hope the city has come to its senses on Warm Mineral Springs. It's been years and years and years of negligence and the citizens speaking out time and time again. A pretty embarrassing survey that the commissioners had to ignore and pretend wasn't valid, even though they authored it. And it's time to, really partner with the community. And that's really what I want to see from the city. I want to see the city succeed. I want to see them get the development they need, but it needs to be respectful of homeowners and taxpayers. And what I'm seeing with this medium density corridor and high density corridor is like nothing I've ever seen before. You can also see, if you're interested on this map, all the other activity centers, 1 through 10, they're scattered throughout the city. That was really going back 15, 20 years, what the city talked about a lot in terms of where they would have commercial development. Okay, Warm Mineral Springs. So most people have followed Warm Mineral Springs. If you don't know, I'll give you a very short history on it. 1940s, started as a roadside attraction. They brought in sand and dumped it in the spring so it looked like a beach. It was privately operated for some 6 decades as a roadside attraction, as a healing water, balneology resort, day spa type of thing. The private owner went bankrupt, I believe, in 2009, in 2014. No, in 2004, I think they went bankrupt. In 2009, the city of Northport and Sarasota County purchased it jointly, argued over what should be done there. Quite ironically, the county wanted to put a hotel on it. Nobody in the city of Northport was behind that. So eventually they tired of the bickering and they sold it to Northport. And that's how Northport became sole owner of Warm Mineral Springs. As part of the P3 that was proposed that fell through, a geotechnical study was done. I am by no means a geotechnical expert here, so I'm not going to speak to any of the details in this. I'll just say that a microgravity survey is a minimally invasive way of evaluating land. It has lots and lots of drawbacks, doesn't tell you about composition and other things that, again, I'm not going to get into. I'm not going to go through all of their methodology. You can see that they tested in areas that were going to be for what the P3 was supposed to have: multi-floor residential, restaurant, cabins. I don't see the putt on there, as tasteful a idea as that was. However, this is basically your map. It is sideways. Let me see what I can do about that. Okay, so springs on your left-hand side. And these are the different places where buildings are going to be placed. They did find areas, this D&E area, where there was low gravity readings. Essentially what that means is potential cavities or porous areas, potentially unstable. I can't speak to how unstable or any of those things. I do not have the credentials to do that. But this is just a very brief overview so you're aware of it. This was just released yesterday, I believe. So this talks about the study they did and the results they got, and I'm going to leave it at that. I'm no expert on that stuff. Legacy Trail going into Warm Mineral Springs. Of course, this is always supposed to have been done for years and years. The Warm Mineral Springs Park was supposed to have a connection with the Legacy Trail. What a great way to get even more visitors to Warm Mineral Springs, even more revenue to the city of Northport, even more opportunities for people spending money and time in the city of Northport. Legacy Trail routes as evaluated by the city. This goes over the county, basically bringing it down from where it terminates currently, which is just north of here, West Price. And then this would be the property just north of Warm Mineral Springs where that star is. Now that property there is owned by the county, but there is a lot to the south of that that is privately owned. And that area there is quite wet. It's low in there. Previously, Chuck Speak testified in a city commission that we could route this onto the R canal that runs through here for the connection to Warm Mineral Springs. I'm not sure why that isn't discussed in these three routes the city is saying are possible. They're saying if we were going along here, we'd have to go through property that's not owned by the city, which is the yellow star there. It's a single lot. But I don't know why we would need to go through there when we could go along the canal embankment and have a straight line. So that's a question I'd like to get from the city. If they would, that would be great. In any case, there is some mitigation involved with running it this way. There are potentially gopher tortoises in here. I'm not sure if you use the embankment in the road that is there already, and there is a road there, dirt road, why there would be mitigation necessary. But that's what these notes say from staff, and it has costs. Option 2 kind of runs it along the north end of the area around Warm Mineral Springs and brings it down through Antonio Street. And it says we do need easements, which I believe would come from the county, and there's no wetland mitigation or gopher tortoise relocation. And Route 3, which is preferred by staff, brings it through a couple of roads into Warm Mineral Springs. A little bit more convoluted in my opinion. Honestly, I don't really care all that much. I just want to see the city do anything with Warm Mineral Springs, and connecting the Legacy Trail would be great. I know that there's lots of willing partners there. These are the numbers the city has for running these different designs and routes into Warm Mineral Springs. Here's the springs up close. Here's the whole city of North Port if you've never seen a good view of it. You can see it pretty much terminates in terms of Route 41 being within the city, right where South Cranberry is or just before it. So that part of 41 that's in the city of North Port is really only this section here. Warm Mineral Springs here. You can see, of course, it's a single parcel, and this is a better view, a higher detailed view of that property. So this parcel right here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the long one here to the north, that is owned by the county. And this tiny one is privately owned. However, previously Chuck Speak said that we could run along this canal and then come into the property here, which I believe the city public works department, that's already how they access this area. So I'm not sure why that's not included in those proposals, but that's really a, kind of a minor thing. I don't think I have anything else. I know I tried taking up a little bit more time than I thought I was gonna. I hope I wasn't boring or anything, but I know we were depending on some other people to provide information and they can't attend. So I'll excuse myself and turn myself over to Pam and Rick.
Thank you, David. So Pam and Rick, you can go next. And there's a little bit of interference with the recording. I'm not sure why, but if everyone that has their cameras on could possibly turn them off. I've been on other Zooms where that has helped. When it comes to the recording, if you're not going to be speaking, if you could turn your camera off, that may help with the quality of the recording and the speaking. So, okay, up next we have Pam. Oh, is it Tokars of No Rezone North Port, Florida. She started a group that has a Facebook page, and Rick Kilby will be joining her. He is a passionate springs advocate with deep knowledge of warm mineral springs and the author of Florida's Healing Waters. Previously, before I started the meeting, I had put a lot of links in the chat, or I thought that I did, for the various groups and different information you'll be hearing tonight. And then I was told it wasn't there, so I will try to get that back in the chat as we move along. And we've got a lot of content to cover, so if you, I don't know that we're planning to do Q&A right now. We're just going to go through all the speakers first, see how much time we have at the end, and maybe we'll do a Q&A in the chat. We'll just kind of see how it goes time-wise. All right, so go ahead and Pam and Rick, carry on.
Yeah, Rick, you go first and just let me know when you want me to move the slides.
All right. Well, thank you for this opportunity. And David, thank you for that great presentation. I learned a lot. I'm learning a whole lot about North Port. I am not a North Port resident myself. I live in Orlando, and my interest in this whole topic is I want to preserve the buildings that are at Warm Mineral Springs. So could you go to the next, my first slide? This one. So my book covers all the places in Florida that had springs that were believed to have healing waters, and spas were built. Most of those were built during the Victorian era. There were a large number of them along the St. Johns River where people could access them by steamboats in the 19th century. There were some in the middle part of Florida and North Florida that were accessed by railroads. And then there were some that were accessed later. So the important thing to note about this is Warm Mineral Springs is the furthest south of all the healing waters in our state. And I really documented 22. There are over 1,000 artesian springs in the state of Florida, and really only 22 that I could find had spas that were built there. And only 2 operate today. That's the spa at Safety Harbor up near Clearwater, where the water comes out of PVC pipes and Warm Mineral Springs. So it is a very, very unique place in my estimation. The whole practice of taking the waters is this ancient ritual that people have undertook for thousands of years. And I think, you can tell by the people who are devoted visitors to Warm Mineral Springs, they really believe in the efficacy of taking the waters. Can you go to the next one? So like David said, the spring was really developed in the late 40s, and then in the 1960s, there was this whole movement to take advantage of the 400th anniversary of the arrival of Pedro Menendez in St. Augustine and Tristan de Luna in Pensacola. So there were actually 3 quadricentennial celebrations. The one in St. Augustine celebrated Menendez and was very important, a historical footnote in the civil rights movement, because African Americans protested for lack of representation. So Martin Luther King actually came to St. Augustine to get involved with that, and the events that happened there were instrumental in the passage of civil rights legislation. In Pensacola, on the other end of the state, their celebration was a little underwhelming. So Northport got involved because they saw the people who own the spring saw a marketing opportunity. So they thought they could get people driving up and down Tamiami Trail to stop and perhaps sell them some real estate. So they had gotten some of the displays that were previously on display at Pensacola. They had a Seminole Indian village. They had these ladies who were water ballet. Can you go to the next one? And they built these wonderful buildings by noted architect Jack West, who's a member of the Sarasota School of Architects, which is a well-known design movement that, you know, emanated in your area. And this is what it looked like at the time of the quadricentennial. On the right building is the cyclorama. The cyclorama depicted the life of Ponce de Leon. It's probably one of at least 3 left in the country. The other ones are Civil War, but perhaps the only one in the United States that is still in the original location. The other 2 were moved. The one at Gettysburg and the one at Atlanta were both moved. And those are Civil War depictions. The front building was called a sales office, and the back building would have been the bathhouse. And that's pretty much what it looked like. This is an image from the state archives. Can you go to the next one? So here's some of the things they had. They had the cyclorama, the Spanish pavilion. They actually got historic artifacts. They had Seminole Indian Village, Tourist Effects. It was in large effect a roadside attraction. It was very unsuccessful. They had a huge number of people there for the grand opening, but it failed miserably because there was construction at the same time on the Tamiami Trail. So they didn't have quite the numbers they had. So what happened is it mostly became a day spa, like David said, that, you know, and attracted international visitors, mostly people from Eastern Europe who had this long history of taking the waters. And David talked about some of the things that happened. I think my first visit there was 2011, and it was operated by a private company. And you could see that while the building showed age, that it was still pretty much a loved resource. And there were gardens all around. There was a restaurant that had a very interesting menus, you know, things like borscht that Eastern Europeans would have loved. Can you go to the next one? And this is what it looked like. The company did a fairly good job from my perspective of operating it. You know, there were a large number of people using the resource, loving it. And to me, of all the places in Florida, this is the one that's closest to old world bathing experience. You know, you can go to any town with a Baden in Germany or these great bathhouses of Hungary, and people are there all day long taking the waters. This is the closest thing we have. So this is unique in Florida culture of any place we have throughout the state. Can you go to the next one? So this is what it looked like at its opening. You can see the buildings are fresh and new and clean. The architecture, echoes the shape of the spring itself, which if you were to take a cross section, looks like an hourglass. So Jack West kind of used that hourglass shape for the 2 main buildings. Of course, you know, these buildings were falling on hard times already, but when Hurricane Ian hit, they fell into much disrepair. So if you could go to the next one, we can see some of the damage. That's the cyclorama building when I first visited. I believe those statues there were part of the historical displays that are kind of propped up by 2x4s. The cyclorama, when I visited, was in good shape for the most part. There wasn't any leaks in the building that I could tell. It was pretty much untouched by time, honestly. Oh, next one. Oh,
that was it.
Okay. Well, so it was damaged significantly by Hurricane Ian. So the city recently, as you know, looked for bids for demolition. So I started working with the Sarasota Alliance for Historic Preservation, and we started putting together a plan. And we are running an ad that will be in the Sun on Monday and Tuesday, and you can learn a little bit more about our other partners. But with the Sarasota Alliance for Historic Preservation, we believe that taking a phased approach to explore grant options and the use of the funding already allocated toward the Springs development, the city of North Port, with the assistance of experts in historic preservation, can restore this mid-century gem to make it better than ever. We're asking the city to do the following. First, stabilize and secure the historic buildings. With the funds already allocated to demolition of the buildings, North Port could stabilize the structures while it works with preservationists to pursue grants for restoration work over time. And our plan shows just the tip of the iceberg of some of the funding that is related. Number two, adopt a comprehensive approach to the park complex redevelopment plans. The historical and cultural integrity of the building comes from the springs, the parkland, and its buildings. We urge the city to consider the historic structures and their preservation as a critical component for any change to the larger complex and not proceed with development plans piecemeal. Number three, restore and promote Warm Mineral Springs as a vibrant cultural and historical heritage attraction in South Sarasota County. A sensitive restoration of the complex that would protect the springs, the parkland, and the built environment could create a significant tourism and wellness attraction. So that is my plan. If you would like to see the plan, you can go to preservesrq.org and look for our ad in the Sun on Monday and Tuesday.
I'll
Okay,
just chime
Pam.
in really, I'll chime in really quick. Rick, thank you. I did put in the chat the links I mentioned earlier, and there is a link at Sarasota Alliance for Historic Preservation that gives you more information about the plan that Rick was speaking about. So you can check the chat now. I did get them in there again, as far as I could tell.
Thank you.
Okay, Pam, go ahead.
I'm ready. Okay, you can see right up here is our current zoning map, the way it is now. The city of North Port decided that they needed to update their unified land development code. And what they wanted to do, it has not been updated, I guess, for at least 10 or 20 years. I forget, it's been so long since we started this journey with the exact amount of time. But the reason why part of the ULDC is the zoning map of the city of North Port. The city was plotted out years ago as just single family homes with no room for commercial. So as the city grew, we have a need for commercial. Right now, the commercial tax base of North Port is around 8%. Benchmarks for cities our size say we need to be at 30%. So that's not going to happen right away or at all, I don't think, because of the amount of land already owned. But with this rezoning, they hopefully will get it up to 17 or 18% commercial tax base. So when this all came about, it was presented last April 2023 during a commission's meeting, and they've held various workshops, but that's all they did. They just put those, they were hoping that because they broadcasted it on their YouTube channel, that citizens of North Port were going to be aware of this rezoning was happening. They weren't sharing it with anyone. Well, we all know we're busy, and no one has time to watch these lengthy meetings or even try to look for this stuff on the city's website. So there was a group of 4 of us that decided to form No Rezone North Port and start spreading the word. We have been holding monthly meetings since November for citizens of North Port to either educate them, let them know what exactly was being rezoned, the zoning definitions that were going to change, and would their neighborhoods be affected. So with that, and that was the only way that people were going to get notified, was basically through word of mouth. So some of these rezoning definitions that are going to change, most of the single family, but the residential medium R2 will allow for cluster housing, which will be like 10 houses on 1 acre, tiny homes, townhomes, other single and two-family structures, duplexes, and then single-family dwelling units could be attached or detached. And they're also creating a residential R3, which is multifamily, which will be high-density residential with multifamily use. And they will include quadruplexes, townhomes, build-to-rent communities, and low to mid-rise multifamily structures. And then we're going to go to the corridor zoning district. And I need to also say this too. This rezoning is very, I guess, fluid. Some of these districts that are being presented during this future land use that Dave talked about have changed because they needed to change it for some other reason. So some of the zoning information that we've been working on, once it comes up in front of the commissioners in either June or July, it will have changed from what we've worked on. Two of those changes are these corridor districts. The corridor transitional is they're located along those arterial roadways that Dave had showed you. They allow for medium density residential, which are those R2, and non-residential uses in which they have non-residential uses could be developed separately. So the commercial could be separately, or they could do vertical where the commercial's on the bottom and the apartments are on the top. And then the corridors are going to be the arterial roads, and they would also be on collector roads. And these would also allow for high density residential, which will be the apartments as well. Now, this is the zoning. Pardon me? No. So this is the proposed zoning map. So you can see all of these roads that were changed in the future land use are all going to be the residential medium to allow for single family and duplexes. And then these pink areas here, they were mixed use transitional. And then the purple is the mixed use 2. Those are changes. They no longer have the mixed use 1 and 2. They now change those to the corridor districts. And those will be located on those medium density future land use, which most of those mixed use ones are going to be probably in these areas. I didn't see that a darker shade down here, but especially this lady slipper area here is going to be the high density residential. They now changed price from what was going to be the mixed use transitional, which was only duplexes and commercial with a vertical, to now it will be that high density residential as well. And this is none, I don't know if any of the people along Price are aware of this at this point. So those are going to be some of the changes. But as you see here, there are the activity centers are pretty much already written in stone. We've got activity center 6 over here, and then this activity center 10 at the bottom is brand new. So anyone that owned property in this area that was thinking of building a house as a single family will no longer be allowed to build in that area there. And then let's see. As a result of some of our meetings, there were groups of residents who actually went around to their neighbors and notified them. So this area right here is staying single family or residential low. So single family homes will be in this area. This was originally on the original map slated to be the mixed use 2 with the higher density and mostly apartments, no duplexes, and commercial. So they were able to show that there were enough people in the neighborhood that had homes in there and owned properties that wouldn't be cost effective to change it to the mixed use 2. So they were able to get the city to reverse that. There's also a little area here in Activity Center 6 that I have. Let me see if it's the next slide. There we go. This is that little area in Activity Center 6. Where these little striped lines are, there were neighbors that got together and also met with the city. They have there's a lot of single family homes in that area as well. And it's actually currently, even though it was changed to Activity Center 6 years ago, the current zoning designation on their tax bill says single family residential. It was an oversight by the city. So the city commissioners took that and reversed their decision. So now these people will be allowed to build single family homes in these areas as well. So we kind of take that as a win. We didn't get much change, but we got, for what we did get changed was pretty good. So our other concerns that we discussed during this meeting, and I'll go back to this, is the amount of infrastructure that is going to be needed to bring the commercial development to North Port to be able to support this commercial tax base is going to be very expensive. The area out here by the Yorkshire exit is their biggest commercial tax base that they're going to be dependent on. Their exit for that Yorkshire area is not going to be installed until 15 years from now. The state is working on it. It is one of their priorities, but until the state puts their exit in here, this area is going to remain vacant. So you've got all these lands collecting taxes as a vacant residential lot with no commercial buildings on it to increase our tax base. And as you know, North Port really doesn't have any sewer, or areas that really have sewer here are mostly this road here and then this road here. And I believe the sewer goes from down Price over to Toledo. It doesn't cover any of these areas here. The plan to install the sewer and water in all of these areas here is going to take years to go. So our concerns are that if this infrastructure is not able to be put in based on their projected growth for the city, how is that not going to affect the taxes on the residents that are currently here? I did check with the city planner. She said that most of the infrastructure will be paid for by the bigger developers, but they'll pay for most of it with the impact fees, but it's not going to cover all the infrastructure that we need. So that was one of our biggest concerns. And most of the areas too, like this area, Lady Slipper, they're concerned about the fact that it is a flood area and they do flood, and they're afraid that if there's commercial development that goes in there, that it'll flood out their homes. But they were told by the city that any commercial development that goes in there has to have flood water, meet their flood water standards. So they can't really build and flood anyone out based on their building. So we will see about that. And then, yeah, and especially out here in Activity Center 6, there's original roads out there from 1959 that have trees and grass growing out of them. They haven't done anything with the road and drainage out there. So besides the road and drainage and the sewer and the roads that have to be improved, that's a lot of money that they're going to have to spend. And let's see. Just bear with me. So I did cover all that. Okay, and this was just a draft of non-residential percentages after the rezone. So this on the left-hand side, I know hopefully you can see it, but at the bottom here, that's 17%. So they're getting, they're using the non-residential uses in activity centers, the mixed use, transitional and mixed use, 2 was what they call it, which will now be those corridor districts, and any of the villages, which is going to be in, I think that's Whalen Park, and then our new Toledo Village up north of 75 off of Toledo Blade, which I believe is called Star Farms now. So any of those village and the Bobcat Village, once they put some commercial up in there, then that will be our 17%. So that is it for the rezoning. And I know Dave spoke a lot to the future land use, because that was going to be Debbie's portion here. So he did cover this part. And then I just wanted to show you here for the medium density residential and high density residential in the future land use, that they did allow the R2 in environmental and government. And then the high density was the R3 and environmental and government. And there's also some areas, I believe, it's the corridors. The corridors, when they do those for the future land use that they put in, they will allow for commercial, residential, R2, R3, environment and government, and then the high density corridors will be the the CT corridors along with light industrial and R3 residential. And then this was the map that shows the current future land use. So you can see that all of these areas here are all the single family plots. All around the outside here is our agricultural area, and then these are villages, and then the activity centers. So then there's a big difference from when you pop from here to here, but then Debbie was also able to pull out this map. So you can see where most of these high density corridors, the darker brown up here in Lady Slipper, down along Price, down at the bottom of Sumter there, and then the medium density with how far they go out now too. And then all the way out by Atwater and San Mateo. So it's a big change. Like
And I have to, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I have to say, when you look at that map right there, you have to understand that the way it's defined, it goes a half mile off for those collector roads and a mile and a half off of Price.
Yeah.
So anything within a half mile or a mile and a half from those areas can be rezoned.
Yeah,
So
I'm sorry, Dave, this would be a good map to superimpose over your Google Earth thing that you did with the yellow lines to show the miles and the half miles.
I have to chime in too, if you don't mind, Pam, really quick.
Go ahead.
From a conservation standpoint, can you back up to that slide that shows all the different colors? The one before, yeah, there you go.
This
If
is,
you look closely,
yeah.
the areas that are proposed to be conservation are on the outskirts of the city, the Mayaca Forest, and then you've got in the back there, Orange Hammock, the Walton Ranch. But the city itself is 104 square miles, and that's about 65,000 or so acres. In the city proper, I call it, the majority of the city, which is the yellow and then all the different colors, there is no conservation land at all. And I just want to point that out for perspective while we're looking at this map. There is a school of thought, I guess I'll call it, where it is said that, oh, we have lots of conservation land around the city, so nature's over there. We don't need to worry about nature here in our neighborhoods, you know, Cranberry and off of Sumter and off of Salford and Chamberlain. And the reality is that all of these parcels that have been sitting undeveloped for years and years and years support wildlife, support habitat, support native plant communities, which is where we come in, the Environmental Conservancy of North Port and surrounding areas, who are working on acquiring some of these lots to save some of that nature in all of those yellow and also those other colorful areas, because it's wooded, it's natural, it's nature. And I just wanted to point that out while we were all looking at a map. That's where our focus is, not the outskirts. Of course, that's important, and it's excellent that we have those outskirt areas, but nature is not just over there on the outskirts, it's also within our neighborhoods. So I just had to throw that in while the getting was good. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good
if I can
point.
add to that too, because it's such a valid point, the city's tree ordinance always read that the canopy in the city was to be 35% citywide. And that's been manipulated by the city to say, well, it's 35%, we'll count Mayaca State Forest, we'll count Orange Hammock. These are things that the city had nothing to do with. In fact, Orange Hammock, they wanted to develop. So it's really laughable. There's just it's bad faith from the city. Their own ordinances, which I'm sure they are busy changing the language for their tree ordinance, again, specified citywide tree coverage of 35%. So I think it's a very valid point to make, that if you're going to pretend you have conservation areas and they're a state forest, they're a fish and wildlife preserve, and I believe this is part of Deer Prairie, that's the shoe tract, again, has nothing to do with the city. The only thing the city has as conservation is the Mayacahatchee Greenway, which that's great. Like we like it, but there's really nothing else. I'm not sure.
And there's no conservation easement on it either.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Mhm. Okay. Are you all set, Dave? Okay, and then Dave also reminded me something too. Chapter 3 of the ULDC really covered the zoning changes, which was the biggest one. Chapter 4 also is the building descriptions with more of the information on how you're going to develop your property. One of the biggest things that they did put in there was the fact that any new single family home that is going to be built must have a garage. You cannot build your home now if you don't put a garage in. And it has to be used as a garage. You can't put it in as a 4th bedroom if you were doing 3-bedroom. So there were a few other items in chapter 4 that if you start really going into it, especially with the parking and whatnot, that it started making the sound like the city of North Port was going to be changing the whole city into an HOA. And there were some people that weren't happy about that. So now this future land use map that's going to come to the city commissioner on Tuesday, the comp plan and the future land use map had to be changed because the future land use map is part of the comp plan. Those all had to be changed and updated in order to reflect the zoning changes that were coming to the city. So that's why the comp plan's coming first. And then the rezoning map will come second. And this will go to the state for approval. And then the, I just had a train of thought and I just forgot it. If I think of it later, I'll let you know. But yeah, so that will come, that's what it was. The rezoning. The city said that per state statute, because it was over 10 continuous acres that they were rezoning, that they did not have to notify the residents in writing. So there are people from out of state, out of country that own property that will never ever know that their property has been rezoned and they can't build a single family home on it. And the reason why they got away with it like that was because what they're going to do is they are going to rescind the original zoning map and then issue a new one. So that's how they got away with it, because now they're rezoning the entire city, which is more than 10 continuous acres. So I just wanted to point that out. The other item that's on the agenda for Tuesday is going to be the Gateway Activity Center, which is Activity Center 3. This activity center is located along 75 and Sumter. This will be where Sarasota Memorial Hospital is putting a hospital in. So they're going to be doing a presentation. They did some guiding principles I put on here about the development, placemaking, transportation, and flood mitigation, because this area is a bigger flood hazard. So they will take these 4 principles into fact. So they did a study of the area, and this outlined in orange is going to be the Activity Center 3. The whole other study area in the black is what was taken into consideration. And so now all this whole area here is just one big flood zone. So when Sarasota Memorial will be going here, so any of the building that goes into this area, and especially this lady slipper area here with any commercial that they put in there, will have to meet the flood zone standards. And then this here were the areas. So there's residential currently here in the study area. This is a proposed Activity Center 3. They're going to have the original one, but in the rezoning, they're extending Activity Center 3 to take these properties north of that area here. And that they're all right along Sumter on either side. And there's the big slough that comes down here that is why it floods. So most of these homes along the big slough here and then down in the lady slipper here and on the other side have been purchased by the city of North Port through either their city or Rona drainage. So no one builds houses in this area and gets flooded out. And the first land use scenario that they proposed for this area is the hospital down here and some light either medical offices and retail here. I believe they've got some offices up here, and I'm sorry I can't read this. Hold on. More medical offices, and these look like retail and larger offices. So this was the first scenario. They came up with a second one for the hospital, most of the medical offices and retail down here, and then just leave this as outdoor recreation up north, because this area north of the interchange is more susceptible to flooding as well. And then 3, they still leave it recreational up north. They'd have a little retail here. I have no idea why they put that there, because it's just going to flood. And then down here, medical labs. This is a water feature, and then mostly hospital. So these are the scenarios that they're going to present to the city commission, and their recommendation basically was to focus on most of the development south of 75, and then have the northern part be developed later. So this will also come in front of the commission. I did speak to Chuck English about this, and he's very concerned about the water conservation and what happens if you put any type of retail or business here. Because Activity Center 3 also allows for, even though this is your proposed plan, some of the uses in Activity Center 3 also include a truck stop, and any pollution from that truck stop would just run down into the big slough, which is part of our drinking water. Whoops, and I believe that's it. Now I'm all set.
Okay, I have a question in the chat from Monica. She said, can someone please provide an example of what an activity center is? And what are the small city parks considered to be? Well, I'll just say regarding the city parks, if you mean existing parks, they are just, they're parks, open space recreation, not including the Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park and Oaks Park. They are open space recreation. They don't have conservation easements on them.
Is that on the key? Is there a key, the key that you've been using with the activity center 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
Oh,
Is that, where does it fit on the key?
on the current map, it said on the existing future land use map, it says open space recreation. On the new map, I don't think it's on there at all. Are the parks on the new map, Pam? Hold on. I
No,
have to...
no, the blue on these maps are I believe they're the schools throughout the city. I don't know. Let me see if it's on.
Yeah. Yeah, it says public
There's something here that is in the future. the current
recreation
future
open
land.
space. That's
Yeah,
the
but
current
that's
map,
not-
recreation
yeah.
open space.
But that doesn't include like Dallas White Park down. Well, there's the green here. But
Yeah, I think it
know
is the parks.
That be Atwater. Yeah, they might be the parks.
But the future, the new one,
Yeah, I don't
doesn't,
have anything.
does the new map designate that?
No. Nope.
So this
And
is the
what-
map that's coming before commission on Tuesday. So this
Yep.
is really the one we need to focus on, in my opinion. And anybody who cares about the future of city of Northport needs to be there on Tuesday. Real quick, I want to throw in, there's a piece of property somewhere off of East Price. It's referred to as Italy Avenue. I believe it's about 30 or 40 acres. It was acquired by the city of Northport because there's a lack
Oh,
of
right
services
here.
for the houses in that area. That has been changed too. It was purchased to be parks, to be soccer fields and things like that. And now I believe it's, what is it, Pam? Is it
It looks
medium
like it's
density
medium
corridor?
density corridor.
Right. So now we're talking about everything, including light industrial. We're talking 50-foot buildings. This was supposed to be park space for the people who live in that neighborhood.
And
what
I
is
believe that
activity-
there has been research that has been done, and I may not say this specifically correctly, that actually the number of parks that we have, we are under the amount that we're supposed to have serving the city, but it depends on who you ask or which entity or commissioner you talk to about that topic. That's my understanding from the last that I heard about that some say we have plenty, others say we're underserved, and there's been various information come out about that. And maybe Pam or David, you can speak to that, but I
There,
do want to share that.
yeah, Barbara, there is a percentage in the comp plan, and I believe it's down to 4% now. And Chuck English has talked to me about this as well, and it started off at 10%. Now it's down to 4%, and I'd be interested to see what it's down to now. But I didn't see. He did review the amendments, and we didn't see anything about the parks, but if it's down to 4% and this city's going to grow to 250,000 people, there's no way that that 4% of parks is going to support that population.
And then the second part of my question, activity center 1 through 10, could you provide an example of what that is?
Yeah, I can do that. And I don't know exactly. Oh, activity center 1, activity center 1. Anywhere you see an activity center, those were created by the city years ago to basically replace the fact that we don't have a downtown area where everyone can meet and gather. So what they did was they decided to create these little activity centers scattered throughout the city that were supposed to be like that downtown area for that that activity center, and that's where they're going to concentrate all of their commercial.
Yeah, and I would add that I think the idea of activity centers was to respect neighborhoods too, that where we're now not seeing that at all. In fact, I would call this new future use map here as an all-out assault on neighborhoods. I don't really think that's hyperbole. One other thing I wanted to mention real quick while it's in my brain, and then I'll mute, that Italy Avenue property, in a previous commission meeting, someone from Sotheby's came before the commissioners and pitched putting duplexes on that property. And I know Vanessa Carasone was on the commission at the time of that meeting, and she objected to that because that property was acquired for the people in that part of town, since they were underserved for those types of park facilities. So it'll be very interesting to see why that's being rezoned and who turns up. I can tell you that someone from Sotheby's was actually in a commission meeting pitching, putting, side-by-side units there that would be rented perpetually. They would never be owned by the tenants.
Okay, and there's one other question here from Sherry. What is North Port City standard for flood prevention? 25-year, 50-year, or 100-year flood?
I believe what they're doing now in this the ULDC is they're having all the building codes, or anyone that's building, I think, go to 100-year floodplain. But then they I'm not too sure about that because I didn't really follow that, but I know I heard Alana say that the standards were going to be held to that. And then plus the fact anyone that's going to build commercial, I think, also has to work with Swift Mud as well regarding the water and the floodwater management. So they'll have to meet the Swift Mud policies as well.
Yes, and I believe I heard in the presentation about the development of the Sumter interchange that the developers would be handling management of their stormwater. They would have some major responsibility in how the water would be routed through the Sumter area there. There is an entire commission meeting about that gives the presentation, and there's some conversation there if anyone wants to go to it. It was last month, so look up that meeting.
Yeah, and part of the reason why they rezoned that Lady Slipper to such a high area for commercial use was the fact that Alana Ray had stated that when a homeowner comes in and builds their single family home, they raise it up with the dirt and all the water runs down to the side. So they really don't have any controls for the flood water, and they can't tell the people how to control their flood water when they're building. But when a commercial person comes in and starts to build on property like that, they have to meet the standards that the city puts in place for the flood waters and the storm drains. So that's why they changed that area, they said, to that commercial density there.
All right.
I think it was kind of,
go ahead.
I think it was kind of a foregone conclusion that neighborhood was going to end up commercial too because of the hospital.
All right, Pam, I think we're good here. You're done. Thank you so much.
I'm
and
done.
Also, David, thank you as well. So we have a next speaker. Oh, Tom, do you want to go first before Kathy does? Or maybe Kathy's ready now.
Well, while we're still, while this is all fresh in our minds, I'd like to ask a couple of questions because, first of all of this is new, pretty much new to me. And so let me just ask, David, when you were talking about the proposed changes to zoning coming up on Tuesday, did I understand you correctly to say that people, the citizens of Northport were not notified about that?
Well, Pam might actually be able to speak to that better than I, but I think the answer is no. No one was notified of this. In fact, these new medium density corridor and high density corridor, I don't think anybody even heard of this up until 2-3 days ago, or whenever the agenda was released for this meeting. So again, as you know, the future land use map is part of the comp plan. It would need to be changed in order to change the zoning that's part of the ULDC. So first they have to completely change the future land use map and the comp plan to suit whatever changes they're gonna, they're wanting to do in the ULDC for zoning. Yeah, I don't think anybody realizes the potential effects of this that would be an average homeowner in the city.
Yeah, and Tom,
Was it-
Tom, I'd just like to point out too that all of the city commission meetings regarding the ULDC that they've held since April have just really focused on the rezoning and the ULDC chapters, of which there's 6 of them that they went through. They did say that the comprehensive plan had to be changed to update it. However, there was never any discussion regarding the amendments or the comprehensive plan or the future land use brought to the commissioners to discuss at a workshop and then bring it. So they're in a big hurry to get this rezoning done. And I'm going to say it, they're in a hurry to do it before election year because they know it's going to pass 4-1. And that's my opinion, and I stand by it. And yes, they didn't notify anyone. They just said, well, it's on the website, it's on YouTube. And actually the city has started sharing little videos that Alana Ray does and posting more stuff on their Facebook. Well, they don't really post it on the Facebook page. They do share the videos that Alana does. They did that as a result of there was like 4 or 5 of us from this No Rezone group that decided we needed to get the media involved. So we met with the Herald Tribune, we met with the Sun, we've met with Fox 4. We tried to get some other media involved. So once the media started publishing stories on this, then the city started sharing more information.
Thank you. If you or David or anyone has a kind of summary write-up of this, we would be happy to publish it on the Scan blog and other social media. I appreciate the fact that you have contacted the papers and so forth, but I would be happy to share in spreading the word. And I have to say, uh, I worked in Charlotte County in the 90s, and so I was partly responsible for and familiar with the Northport issues of the time, which included, some outrageous tales of airplanes landing full of drugs and stuff like that. But there was general development basically took Northport to be just north of Port Charlotte and threw a bunch of terribly conceived plans that, as you pointed out, just included single family homes. General development was not a developer. They did not understand how communities function, what they need, their basic essential resources and so forth. All they were trying to do was sell deeds to land to anybody who would buy them, and then hope that those people would fail to pay 10 years of uh, charges before they got the deed. And in fact, they got indicted and convicted by the FBI for that work. General development screwed everybody that it worked with. Now, what we have is it sounds like you guys and your city are dealing with the upshot of that non-planning, that it was a criminal kind of taking of land and, selling it to anybody with the hopes that they would fail to pay and then they'd sell it again. A lot of lots in Northport sold 5, 10 times. That's a little bit of background that would perhaps help some of us, certainly me, appreciate why you guys have this problem of dealing with getting more adequate commercial today. But what sounds so weird to me is that the city, in going about addressing this problem, is not bringing the people along with it. And I guess this is one of the themes that SCAN has particularly noticed and tried to present county-wide, because Northport is not acting differently from the way the county commission operates, for example. A lot of times we find out about things almost at the last minute. And just a simple example, I live in a community up in Sarasota that did not know, was not informed that a development is going to occur literally within eye distance of my house. If I look out my house, I see land that will turn into 80 or 100 luxury homes within a short time span. But nobody bothered to mention to me that this was even proposed. And then when it went before the planning commission, I heard about it like a week before. We went down there, we protested, and were completely ignored because the planning commission of the county turns out to be a bunch of industry insiders who love development. So anyway, you are telling me that the city is going ahead with a very radical and a plan that will affect even people who own land and won't even hear about the fact that they won't be able to build on it because it's being rezoned. I guess the question I want to ask ultimately here is, can this rezoning, where you're basically taking people's land from them, actually be opposed through a legal mechanism? I'll stop there if anybody has any.
Tom, the only problem is there's not an attorney that's willing to take this. We did reach out to some, however, it's going to involve the comp plan amendment, and per the state, there's a state law that says if you challenge a city's comp plan and lose, you're responsible for the attorney's fees for the other side.
Yes, I am familiar with that, as is Lourdes Ramirez.
Oh yeah.
Who is a member of SCAN. Yeah, we're all dealing with this, and I guess that's part of the big picture, right? That the state has been, in a sense, helping developers every inch of the way. And now, if you oppose a development for very good reasons, you could get a big bill at the end of the process. But what I don't understand is, how is it legally justifiable for the city to take away the rights of people who legally own property there that was zoned a certain way when they bought it?
That we didn't get, we never got, there were people that were willing to, there were people, I'm sorry, I thought I was still muted. There were people that were willing to put money together for an attorney, but actually I did reach out to the attorney that was working with Lourdes, and he wasn't able to take it on the job.
Tim, I was going to say Ralph Brooks told me that he has tried more comp plan challenge cases in the state of Florida than any other attorney. And he told me that the last one he did would be the very last one he would do, because it's just never happening again. Because the onus is now on, I mean, the citizen does not have the resources of the developer. This is a stacked table. This is a stacked game. I mean, I don't want to get into what I would really call this behavior from the city, but I will leave it at the citizens really don't have a voice anymore. It's really sad to me. This is supposed to be representative government. Explain to me who this future land use map benefits at whose expense. How does this benefit the tens of thousands of families that live in Northport, that go to work every day, that have kids? I mean, does this benefit their quality of life to put light industrial in the middle of their neighborhood? It's just outrageous. I've never seen such an absurd proposal that, okay, on these arterial and collector roads, we're going to change it to, a particular type of zoning that allows mixed use and commercial. But you can also extend it a half mile from those roads, or a mile and a half from those roads, which essentially makes the entire all the neighborhoods of Northport now potentially commercial areas. It's really, I mean, I don't know who could consider that a reasonable proposal. I mean, I'm really hoping this is some kind of misguided attempt from people within the city that the commissioners find objectionable. I'd love to have faith in that being the case. I can't really say I do. It's so important that anybody who cares, not just about Northport, but about representative government, show up on Tuesday, the 28th at 6 p.m. to let the commissioners know what they think about these proposals. Because, as you said, this is happening everywhere more and more. Different developments, citizens speaking out against it, the local government just ignoring them. And, from a history standpoint, I think we know what eventually happens if that continues to happen. So it's really not intelligent from anybody's standpoint to do this. Not to mention, I guess what I'd like to get to is, it's our job to tell everyone we know about this, because unfortunately participation rates are very low. So the only way I see I can influence things is to let as many people know what's going on, and that we need everyone to show up. So I don't really have anything else to say. I'm talking too much now, but I really hope to see every single person that cares really about what our country is supposed to be about on Tuesday night.
Yeah, and I just like to add too that for the city, because it was plotted out like this, I mean, I was doing research on another project and found that back to 1996, the city commissioners knew that they needed to increase their commercial tax base. And so this has been going on since 1996. So now it's come to the point where we got to do something about it. But my point all along too has also been, let's notify the residents to let them know, and also work together, because with the amount of stuff that's been kicked down the road, like the infrastructure and all that other stuff, we're all still going to have to pay taxes. I know they want to do it so our taxes don't raise up, but it eventually will. And I'm going to use the police department as an example. We know we need a new police department and we need to grow into the future, but so now we're spending money on infrastructure, because now we have to support a police department going forward because of our population growth. So that's what will happen with the infrastructure. So that was all our meetings. I mean, most of the meetings that we held were basically attended by like 20 people at each meeting, and every meeting was spent educating the people, because they didn't know about the rezoning. So there was never any work getting done to come up with any ideas or anything to present to the city. It was just spent educating everyone. So that's my summary.
I guess if I were to uh, start from the fact that, yes, Northport was planned abysmally. It needs to address fundamental issues that would enable it to become solvent and survive into the future. That's a very important thing, and I can understand why the board would be focusing on it. But I do not understand how they, as a representative body, could act just like the county commission and be blocking us out, blocking the people of Northport, the people of Sarasota County out of the process. And yet that's what we keep finding. This is a major theme that SCAN keeps finding. Everywhere we look, we see this. And this is, I think, part of the crux of the problem. We don't have a problem with planning sensibly for a future need. We have a problem with leaving the people out of it.
And I'm just going to comment in response to that, that there are many people who do take the time to do their homework, like Pam and David, that live here, that really care, that have put their volunteer time and spent countless hours researching and bringing this information to the public. And there are people that go to meetings and make comment. Truthfully, a lot of times the crowd is not as large as it could be. And unfortunately, there's been an attitude developed within City Hall that these citizens are the vocal minority. They are the pot stirrers. They're the problem starters. And it's unfortunate because, you know, the citizens should be involved and their opinions should matter and they should be heard. But what I have seen time and time again is that they want to just be shut down. They don't want to hear the people. It's just an observation from the sidelines and some things that I have heard directly said. So yes, involving SCAN and encouraging anyone who's attending tonight and who hears the recording to make public comment. It would definitely help build the team and build the momentum of people who do want to speak out and who are concerned and who have valid information to share, that there isn't just a handful of people who are advocating against certain changes that the commission wants to make. There's a lot of people behind the faces that are seen all the time.
Yeah. So I'm going to just move sideways a little bit to update this
Hold on,
group.
Tom, I'm sorry. Before you go further, there's someone who wanted to say something about War Mineral Springs. Pat, are you there? Pat, you can unmute
Sure.
yourself.
Yes.
And yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I think I'm unmuted. Yeah.
Yes, this is about War Mineral Springs.
There was a saying from a famous movie. I can't recall what it is, what movie it is, but it seems like with these issues, whether it's county or city level, we have a failure to communicate. Okay. And this goes, it even applies to War Mineral Springs, which was discussed earlier, where initially the city of Northport needed about $18 million in order to do an effective renovation. And because they only had about half of that, they sought out alternative options, which ended up being what was called a P3, a public-private partnership. Now, when that fell through, the city is still strapped. It still only has half of what it needed for effective renovations. And so what the city did was, kind of basically seemed to kind of throw up its hands and say, well, we're just going to demolish the historic structures. And then someone kind of reconsidered that and said, well, maybe we should get input from the public with other ideas about funding options. Now, it's great that the Alliance for Historic Preservation has provided some solutions, and I have offered a solution because War Mineral Springs is a major tourist attraction in Sarasota County. And it should be eligible for a tourist development bond. They're issued by the county. We have tourist development bonds that have supported venues such as the renovation of Ed Smith Stadium up in North Sarasota, the creation of Cool Today Stadium down in North Port, and these were both city and county collaborative efforts. So there could be such a collaborative effort with Warm Mineral Springs and the county. We've also had multi-million-dollar bonds issued for Moat Aquarium, which is moving from Sarasota Bay over to a retention pond by a shopping mall. And we also had two maximum, they're called TDT, Tourist Development Tax bonds, for Benderson Rowing Park. And I have requested and provided a rationale for a $10 million TDT bond to be issued by the county to help with the renovation, appropriate renovation of Warm Mineral Springs. And I am still waiting for some kind of answer from all the people who have received multiple messages about this request. And it's viable. No one has told me that this is not an option. There's just been absolutely no response. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Pat. I will just say, I don't know too many people in Sarasota County who do the kind of detailed, profound research you do. And I appreciate you. You really should join SCAN and be writing up some of this, because you really do see down to the ground what's going on.
I'm
And
in
Pat,
Maryland.
if you haven't, Pat, I recommend talking to Debbie McDowell. If she was going to
we
be
have
on the call,
talked.
but we realized it would be a conflict for her to attend tonight, so she
Right.
terminated her connection. But if you haven't spoken to her, I recommend it for sure.
Okay, we have.
Okay,
Thanks.
good. Yes, thank you. All right, are we good here? We have one more speaker. Hold on, I'm sorry. Misplaced my notes. With Kona, Sarasota?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. This is Kathy from Sarasota County Council of Neighborhood Associations.
Yes. I'm here to discuss just briefly something that's going on, another issue with New College.
And she was, let me just say really quick, she's having a little bit of an audio issue, but we can hear you pretty well. So go ahead.
I've turned up the volume. Is that any better?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
I'm here to address or make known to people an issue with New College. Among the other issues that have been going on with the takeover of the college, one recently has arisen. On the day after the commencement, they commenced a project to start removing trees from the bayfront of the campus. The campus of New College, I don't know whether you're aware of some of the divisions of it, but a portion of it is in the subdivision called the Uplands. And the entire half of the bayfront of the New College campus is property that was part of the Uplands, which was incorporated in 1947. And in the 1960s, when New College was being founded, the association gave the property to New College with the condition, or not a condition, with the presumption that it would be kept as open space. At one point, New College was absorbed into University of South Florida. And when those two institutions divorced, which would have been in 2005, both of them wanted the Uplands preserved, which is what the area that's in that subdivision is called. And there was an agreement about the property because it was entitled or titled only to New College, not to the state of Florida, not to USF, not to the joint. So when USF wanted to share that, New College agreed to give the northern portion of the Uplands Preserve into management of USF under one condition, and that was that the area be left open and that there would be no construction on it aside from a bicycle path. And so that was an agreement. When the new administration came in to New College a year and a half ago and started planning for what to do with the college and land use changes. I don't know whether or not you've covered this, looked at this as far as what's going on in the press. The Sarasota Herald Tribune has carried a lot of the stories regarding it, but I find that most people don't know the geography of what's happening. The Uplands subdivision goes from the airport property line into the bay. And it has these two sections of its bayfront, part of which is USF and part of which is New College. The New College portion is in the city of Sarasota. The USF portion is in, and on the day after commencement, crews came in and started removing many trees from the bayfront, from the most northerly historic building on the New College campus, which was the Edith Ringling residence, to the Uplands boundary, the Uplands Preserve boundary. And at that point, there was a good amount of upcry from citizens about the removal of historically significant trees, mature pines that were considered grand trees, and the destruction of the landscaping near property that's listed on the National Register of Historic Preservation. 2 days later, the crew moved into the Uplands Preserve and started removing trees on the New College campus of Uplands Preserve. Sarasota Herald Tribune is beginning to cover this, and I think that it's important for members of the community to begin to follow this and watch carefully what's going on. The city, some of the residents have reached out to the arborist at the city of Sarasota. The arborist went to the work site and declared a stop order. And within a certain amount of time, the college president overruled that and told the work crews to return to work. And very shortly after that was apparent, a citizen saw the work beginning again. They knew that there was a stop order. They apparently notified the city of Sarasota. City of Sarasota apparently sent out police officers and shut down the work. So I presume that on Tuesday, when offices open back up at the city, it'll be something that's going to be argued legally as to whether the state can preempt the city. And I think it's going to be an important issue for citizens to pay attention to. And I'd like to answer any questions people have.
I have a quick question. What types of trees are they targeting for removal?
Primarily, it's a pine flatwoods of slash pines that are usually part of the second growth forest that is along the bayfront. There are other kinds of trees, but mostly they have eliminated some of the mangroves, trimming the back with quotes. And there were other trees there that were part of the landscape design that was part of the competed nature. Stay. But the pines are the most important thing that's going to rise. They're considered grand trees because of their size. The city of Sarasota didn't used to count pine trees in their grand tree program until finally scientists proved to them that pine trees may not be big and fat, they can, when they are older, and that the dimensions of the trunk of the tree had to be adjusted in order to include pines.
I think I saw an article about this topic on social media today, or it may have been yesterday. Tom, will you be sharing anything if you haven't already about this in your blog or on the SCAN Facebook?
Well, I had a brief conversation with Kathy. I think this is another really significant story, but this is one that involves the state power as well as the county. And I honestly am not sure where people could even appeal this kind of outrageous activity. Do we go up to Tallahassee? What do we do? So yeah, the word needs to be out, but I don't have an answer to it.
The college has now put up a chain link fence along a portion of the Uplands Preserve where the work is going on. And they've also put up a vinyl barrier, a screen that's the same height as the chain link fence that is blue, as it, like the tarps that they use for roofs and stuff. And the interaction with the community and the college has always been very collegial. The Uplands Preserve was always open to the public. We have a lake that drains to the bay through it, so there's an easement through it. So it's a complex element that's as far as population is concerned that lives there. It's always been an important part of the neighborhood. And at this point, the neighborhood association is on hold regarding its interaction with the college, because they're among the groups that are going to be reviewing a proposed master plan for the college, which was due to be released in January and has wound up still not being released. So that the association is waiting in the wings in order to interact with the college. Luckily, individual residents and people from the community that are concerned about what's going on with the bayfront are the ones who have been working in order to fight what's going on. I think that it's going to be important to see how it's covered by the Sarasota Herald Tribune. They have started to cover it. I think it's Stephen Walker is the board officer.
All right, I'm not seeing any questions for you in the chat, so I think we're good with that. Tom, do we have anything else? Anybody else, or are we about done? I'm at the end of my list. How about you?
Well, I don't know if there's anyone else who wanted to update us on activities or whatever going on in their neighborhoods. Is there anyone here from Venice tonight? Apparently not.
No.
I'll just offer one thing real quick, and it goes to this question of leaving the people.
Tom, this is Sherry. I'm here from Venice.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Sherry, do you have anything to offer us in terms of an update for any of the issues going on up there?
So I do know that the North Venice Neighborhood Alliance is trying to rally speakers for the Venice City Council on the Publix on Laurel Road. And I believe that's in litigation as well. I'm not sure if they've heard the date of when that's going to happen. But it may be June 4th. And interestingly enough, going back to what you had said about the city government not really wanting to hear from the people, the city of Venice is actually trying to change their voting terms that they've had in place for 90 years. And they're trying to extend the terms of the city commissioners that are pro-development and would not extend the terms of the two new candidates that were elected that are trying to control growth. So I think it's just a blatant example of what developers are willing to go, what lengths they're willing to go through to try to control what goes on. And I know Tom's aware, but I'm also running for Sarasota County Commissioner because of all of these issues. And I've been coming to SCAN meetings now for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months and trying to get hooked up with all of these various groups. So, I try to join the No Rezone Facebook group and that to try to stay connected to what's happening in all the various areas of the county. So was there anything else you were thinking about, Tom, from a Venice perspective?
North Venice, I know, is having some issues, but we can hear from them in the future.
Sure.
I was going to just add one small anecdote to the point about developers and the county leaving the public out. One of the things I've been working fairly closely on, well, very closely on, is the D.R. Horton proposal to build 170 single-family homes on a farm that is really a farm that really should belong to the Salary Fields amenity. The idea of building another community, and you could build this community anywhere else, but to build it right next to the bird nesting area of a major public project that has had so many good things growing out of it, it just seems bizarre. So anyway, we have had meetings with the planners and with the company, D.R. Horton, and with Kimley Horn. They have met with Audubon. I've been welcomed to be part of the meetings. And what I have to say is they go through this whole process where they're seeming to communicate with us about things they want to do to make this development almost disappear. They're going to build buffers and have special trees and the color of the roofs and all this stuff. And so here's an approach that's quite the opposite of what you're dealing with in North Port. These are people who in fact really would like to persuade us to support their project. And their project is insane. but they are being very communicative. And they will bring this to the county and they will say, we've met with these people, we've communicated with them, we've done everything we can to show them that we're good citizens, we're trying hard. And what I'm saying is bullshit. Okay? This is just technique. This is people, lawyers and planners and builders who know the way this works and they know how to play the game. And what we have to do is stand up and say, bullshit. I'll stop there.
I think we can just following up on that is when is enough enough? That project that you just spoke of next to the celery fields, which is an international tourist attraction. Birders come from all over the world to visit that facility. The dollars it must bring in ecotourism have got to be through the roof. At what point is enough enough? At what point do they say, you know what, we recognize that that piece of land or this piece of land over there is really, this isn't the right fit. We're just not going to do that. I mean, I would love to see that happen one day somewhere. Unfortunately, I don't think we're on that path. And what we're doing right now is all that we can keep trying to do.
Thanks, Barbara. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And frankly, the only reason they want to build there is because they can charge $500,000 per home because of the amenity. But what's going to happen to the amenity as a result of this profiteering?
Right. That's the question right there. What's going to happen to the amenity as a result of the profit to only a few versus the damage it's going to do on the other end? Yeah, that's it right there. All right, I don't see anything else in the chat. So does anyone else have any updates for SCAN? Anything you're working on? Or are we good? I think we might be good. So I will just make sure I do this correctly. Yep, the chat is empty. So, okay. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to stop recording now.